Welcome to Doctor Who and Regency, a presentation for Virtual Con 2024. My name is Amanda-Rae Prescott, and I'm a longtime Whovian and Jane Austen fan who has turned appreciation of British television, Doctor Who, and period drama into a freelance journalism career. Doctor Who at first glance may seem like an unlikely candidate for a Jane Austen fandom discussion. However, Doctor Who has had many episodes that have used history, classic literature, and period drama tropes to tell a science fiction story. Doctor Who's influence can be seen throughout British television, even if it's not always named, as many current creatives have either watched or worked on the show. Doctor Who may be known for its space travel episodes, but trips to the past are just as important. Classic Who, starting in the 1960s, used the time travel episodes to teach young people about important historical events or historical figures. In the 1970s and 80s, historical episodes shifted away from fully teaching the era or important biographical characters and more towards using history as dramatic backdrop for alien interference in human events and social/historical commentary alongside teaching the kids what history looks like. Modern Doctor Who, starting in 2005, restored a balance of a mix of time travel and space travel episodes. In the later 70s into 80s, fewer historicals are made. But now, in the modern era, they've brought back a mix of historical and space travel stories. Many of these episodes in the modern era feature historical mysteries and missing records as a premise for aliens to disrupt fixed points in time. Of course, Doctor and their companions come to the rescue to save fixed points in time from collapsing into chaos. There's moments of joy and comedy in between the fear of dying by alien. It's time Doctor Who's Regency Era episodes are analyzed as the 45-minute period dramas they are. If aliens are interfering with the space-time continuum, then it's very obvious that Doctor Who takes a more liberal path in terms of historical fiction, and it's clearly in the alternate history category. Doctor Who's version of alternate history is actually not just seen on television. There are comics, novels, audio dramas, podcasts, and webisodes, and other forms of media as well. Many historical eras and events may not be directly referenced in Doctor Who canon on the television screen, though they also appear in these official canon works. There are 3 Doctor Who episodes that take place during Austen's lifetime. I'm presenting these in chronological order first, and then comparing it to contrasting elements. Notably, all 3 of these episodes are modern Who episodes. For the purposes of this video presentation, when I refer to Classic Who, I'm talking about everything from 1963 to 1989, and Modern Who is everything after 2015, after 2005. The first episode we're going to analyze is Rogue. It is set in 1813, and it's actually the most recent of the 3 Regency set episodes, as it premiered in May 2024. Rogue stars the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa. He is going to be on the right in the photo. In the middle is his companion, Ruby Sunday, played by Millie Gibson. And on the left, we have the guest star that is also named Rogue, Jonathan Groff. The 15th Doctor and Ruby end up in 1813, and they believe they're being invited to a fancy ball hosted by the Duchess of Pemberton in Bath, but suddenly a family of shapeshifters decide that they're going to possess people's bodies and roleplay the drama, romance, and scandal, just like in Bridgerton. Rogue is a bounty hunter who catches extraterrestrials who have done bad things, and obviously the 15th Doctor is just as much an extraterrestrial as the shapeshifters are. Rogue was written by Kate Herron and Bridie Redman, directed by Ben Chessel, and the showrunner is Russell T Davies. The second episode on analysis is Thin Ice. It actually aired first, but since we're going chronological order, Thin Ice takes place the year after Rogue does in 1814 at the London Frost Fair. Thin Ice stars Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor, and his companion Bill Potts, played by Pearl Mackie. Thin ice refers to the fact that in 1812, in 1814, and some other years in Regency, it was so cold in London that the River Thames froze completely, and you were able to ice skate, dance around on the ice, have fun, and they had fairs where there was musicians, performers, you name it, it was there. And in the episode, you see just as much chaos was on the ice as it would have been back in the day. Um, People were skating on the ice, but of course, at a certain point, it started to melt and people would fall in. Now, this time, since it's Doctor Who, there is something under the River Thames, and it emits a suspicious green light that people see before they fall into the ice, and they never come back up, and you don't even see their bodies reappear either. So something alien is down there. This is not just your normal winter tragedy. And Bill and 12 have to figure out what it is before more people pass away. Thin Ice was written by Sarah Dollard, directed by Bill Anderson, and the showrunner in this era was Stephen Moffat. The third episode in our analysis is The Haunting of Villa Diodati. It takes place 2 years after the ice fair in 1816. In terms of running order on the series, it is in between Thin Ice and Rogue. This episode stars the 13th Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, with her 3 companions. We're going to go from left to right in the picture. So on the left behind Jodie's head is Graham O'Brien, played by Bradley Walsh. In the middle, we have Yasmin Khan, played by Amanda Gill, and on the far right, we have Ryan Sinclair, played by Tosin Cole. Once again, extreme weather plays into the plotline. This time, 1816 was labeled the year without a summer because volcanic ash covered most of the skies for most of the hours of the day, including in the middle of the day. The TARDIS lands in Lake Geneva, Switzerland, outside the villa where Mary Shelley, her husband Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, and some of their friends are hanging out for the summer. This is also a fixed point in time because this is the exact night where Mary Shelley was inspired to write Frankenstein. That is important because it turns out inside the house is one of the Doctor's oldest alien enemies. And it kind of helps that they figure out that something weird is going on because things start appearing and disappearing. They're seeing things that maybe ghosts or not, and other weird things happen, of course, because this is Doctor Who. The Haunting of Villa Diodati was written by Maxine Olchin. The director was Emma Sullivan, and the showrunner was Chris Chibnall. Although Jane Austen forms a considerable amount of pop culture influence on how we view Regency England, Doctor Who has kind of put her a bit in the background. And this is not just about her life, but also her works as well. Doctor Who has actually referenced several events from her lifetime on the show and also in other media as well that forms Doctor Who canon. For example, the first Doctor ended up in the middle of the French Revolution during the episode The Reign of Terror. There are also references to the Prince Regent himself and the Napoleonic War scattered throughout the comics and the audio dramas. Many Doctor Who historicals feature famous writers and poets and playwrights of the past, but it's interesting that Jane Austen herself hasn't popped up yet. However, she has appeared in 2 forms. Either one was a quoted reference to one of the novels. One was a name taken from one of her characters, and then there's a cluster of references that are clearly allude to one character becoming friends of her. The cluster references where Jane Austen clearly befriends one of the characters is during Clara Oswald's time as a companion. In the Christmas special, The Magician's Apprentice, she Clara claims that Austen was a great kisser, and also in other episodes along her season, in Face the Raven and The Caretaker, Clara makes references to her being friends with Austen. This is interesting because Clara's background in the show is that she was a teacher and a nanny, so most likely she's teaching kids Austen and her works, and she, I guess, used some of her off screen with the Doctor adventures to make a new friend in history. Now, in Doctor Who, it's very common for either companions or doctors to make multiple references to famous people they've met or hung out, party with, or kissed in the past. It's just a normal thing on Doctor Who. But what is interesting is this theory that Austen might be queer. I am going to leave that to people who are above my pay grade in terms of Austen scholarship. I think for now, it's just safe to say that Doctor Who just likes to have a bit of fun, and it's just, a, it's not supposed to, I don't think it's supposed to mean anything more serious than, hey, Clara got to hang out with one of her heroes and then end up at maybe kissing her at some point. It's just a thing. That's just, the vibes on Doctor Who are not always about serious scholarship. Keep that in mind. Now, the joke reference I mentioned earlier actually happens inside the Haunting of Villa Diodati. Graham thought he would be funny and make a quick reference to the "it is a truth universally knowledge" quote, but then it turns out he's in front of Lord Byron, so he mixed up his authors, and 13 yells at him for it, so it's a fun moment. And in Rogue, the character name reference, the Duchess of Pemberton, is clearly a reference to Mr. Darcy's Pemberley. Now, I don't have an answer as to why Doctor Who has not used Austen extensively, but I have a theory. And the theory basically goes that Austen fandom would usually requires some sort of grounding in what actually happened, and Doctor Who often throws that playbook out of the window. So it's sort of like it's kind of hard to match those expectations when people want historical recreation and not just historical vibes. While Austen herself is not as large a figure in Doctor Who's version of Regency, several of her fellow authors are. Thin Ice relies very heavily on Charles Dickens's themes, and The Haunting of Villa Diodati introduces Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and Mary Shelley as important literary figures. In a way, this is actually helpful to the audience because these are people you may not associate with the Regency or associate more with Victorian era literature. I've described the background of what makes a Doctor Who historical stand out from your usual period dramas. Now it's time to compare the three episodes in our discussion against each other. We're going to make some comparisons, we're going to make some concurrences, and we're also going to have some contrasts as well. The one theme that runs through all of these episodes is an embrace of alternate history, LARPing, and cosplay. Ruby, pictured here, says at the very beginning of Rogue, "This is so Bridgerton." And it's true because Rogue is essentially one giant Bridgerton LARP with a side of aliens. And that's not an insult at all. Although some people felt it was, I don't think it was. In fact, in Austen canon, there is a precedent for characters to explore the Regency as if it was one big living history party. Let's be real, Lost in Austen could have been a Doctor Who episode. And if you look at IMDb, there's several guest stars and folks in that production who have worked on Doctor Who before. In many of the historical episodes, the Doctor and companions change their clothes to better fit in with the era they're about to explore. There's a freshness of adventure that doesn't exist in your usual trip to a museum. They're taking living history to the next level. Another important point to know about the way the companions approach the adventure is that these three episodes occur at different points in their respective seasons. And all of the companions pictured here are from 21st century Earth, so keep that in mind as well. Thin Ice is Bill's very first trip to the past, While on the other hand, the fam had several historical adventures before the villa. They went to 1955 Alabama, 17th century England, 1890s New York, and the Punjab in 1947, just before partition. So they were a little bit less nervous about the past compared to Bill and Ruby. Before landing in Regency, went to 1963 London. So she's no stranger to historical adventure either. Thin Ice and The Haunting of Villa Diodati are based on real events and then turn toward science fiction and alternate history. Rogue, from the very beginning, makes no attempt to ground the ground the era in any sort of real event other than the fact that 1813 in Bath was a time in the Regency era, and they're going completely with Bridgerton's alternate universe as the underpinnings of the episode. In fact, one can argue that Doctor Who is partially responsible for how we see Bridgerton today, because Thin Ice's screenwriter Sarah Dollard worked in the season one writers' room for Bridgerton. There's also other connections between modern Doctor Who and Bridgerton with other crew members. Adjoa Ando, aka Lady Danbury, played Martha Jones's mom in season 3. Most recently, in another Shooting Up episode, Golden Rochevelle, aka Queen Charlotte, gave 15 Ruby quite the runaround in Space Babies. In addition, we're going to have another Bridgerton guest star in the upcoming Christmas special at the end of 2024. Nicola Coughlan is supposed to guest star as well. So there is a lot of Bridgerton connections with Doctor Who. Not just in spirit and theme, but also in terms of creative inspiration. Somehow, Doctor Who does not get enough credit for its role in changing the way we perceive history on screen, and I hope this video will make you think a little bit wider in that perspective. As I said before, storytelling on Doctor Who requires genre flexibility because it's not just a pure drama. There's a huge sci-fi element as well, and sometimes it's fantasy, and sometimes it's horror, depending on the episode. You have to be willing to let go of historical accuracy or recreating history, and having fun is a huge part of any Doctor Who story. And most importantly, accepting space for all. Doctor Who has always been a bit of very much a progressive show in various ways, and Modern Who, having queer and actors and people of color part of the show, it's been a thing for a while, and the fandom is a much larger base of many marginalized groups in it as well. Now, things aren't always perfect, but I believe that Austin Staces could take some lessons from Doctor Who fandom. Rogue, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, and Thin Ice all expand our view of what we think the Regency is in various ways. Costumes are an important part of characterization for Doctor Who historical episodes. Just as each episode in our analysis had different writers, directors, and showrunners, there were also 3 different costume designers. Pam Down designed Rogue, Ray Holman designed Villa Diodati, and Haley Neubauer designed Thin Ice. I could make an entire separate video analyzing the costumes of these 3 episodes, but I'm going to make things a little bit more simple. I believe overall, the 3 designers decided to play it safe with Regency style. There are some variations in color scheme and the way some of the jackets and dress patterns are shaped, but they're following the basic silhouettes as we would know them compared to the museum pieces. To begin with, in England, they have more access to originals or patterns that are based off the originals. They also have access to costume rental shops where they can rent Regency costumes for the screen, although I believe a good chunk of these costumes were probably made for each episode. But there are probably extras and other people are probably using rentals. In terms of the thing that stands out the most, I would say 13's outfit in Villa Diodati strays the most from the era because she only wears a Regency inspired waistcoat. The rest of her outfit is the her usual blue rain jacket, her pants, and her modern boots. So yeah, the waistcoat is the only thing that's like Regency for her. In fact, this shirt, or either this reddish version or the blue version, whatever, is what she usually wears, peeking out of the jacket. Sharp eyes will observe that Rogue's costumes borrow heavily from Bridgerton's color scheme. As we've seen, Ruby looks like she's wearing an improved version of one of Penelope's season one outfits. One of the alien shapeshifters also ends up in a Penelope-esque outfit. Um, and the 15th Doctor, you notice, kind of has hints of both Lady Danbury and Simon's jewel tone color scheme. Doctor Who's Regency inspired costumes are not often seen outside of Doctor Who specific events. So if you're a fan, I actually highly suggest you try to go to a Regency themed event with a Doctor Who Regency costume. It's great. It's a good mashup idea. The most important takeaway in terms of themes for all three episodes is that we see not only characters of color interacting with the past, but we also see BIPOC in the past as well and living lives. And none of the characters you see, none of the BIPOC characters you see are slaves. In Thin Ice, though, there's a greatest range of greatest range of class, because the first picture here on the left, you see middle class Londoners enjoying the fair. They're looking at an elephant, I believe. In the middle, we have one of the orphan kids, Kitty, who is a pickpocket at the fair, and as you can tell, she clearly is clearly has an entirely different income bracket than the people on the first picture. And on the right, we have some of the attendees of the Duchess's party rogue. The Duchess herself is on the left and is played by Indira Varma. The companions of color interacting with the Regency is also key too, because these cluster of episodes actually change the way Doctor Who treats its non-white characters on historical adventures. The very first thing Bill does when her and 12 land at the Frost Fair is ask if she's going to be, if enslavement is a possibility for her. This is a huge improvement from when, in earlier episode in season 3, when Martha and the 10th Doctor landed in Tudor England, and 10's advice to Martha was just to act like she owned the place, which is terrible advice if you're not a white man. Bill is also shocked to see how many people who look like her in Regency London, and the script makes it a point to point out that what we understand in Regency, based on other period dramas, is whitewashed history, and that there were more Black people in Regency than you would expect. And this attitude is continued on into Bridgerton and other recent Austen adaptations. So this is another example, and this episode obviously aired before Bridgerton, so Thin Ice really should get more credit as a game changer, and Doctor Who overall as well. Compared to Thin Ice and and Rogue, Villa Diodati is a little bit more isolated. Ryan and Yaz end up only speaking to the other residents in the villa. They don't meet anybody else in 1816 Switzerland. So their experience of the downside to life in a Regency for someone who isn't white is a little bit less severe. So Yaz and Ryan there can't figure out where they come from, so they call them they're from the colonies. It's very vague. Sounds insulting, but it's also kind of on the line of maybe they just were trying to be polite. It's not clear, but Yaz and Ryan immediately respond that they're from the north of England, which in this era, for some people, might as well be a different place, but there's a theme throughout the Jodie Whittaker seasons of pride in being from the north of England. Bill's initial excitement about meeting other people of color in the Regency Era quickly turns south because, first of all, we have people falling through ice, and then secondly, we she meets the episode's antagonist, Lord Sutcliffe. Bill does not actually have time to get angry at what Lord Sutcliffe said, and I'm not going to repeat it because it is a flat out racial slur. Uh, However, what is surprising is 12's reaction. In this picture, you can see him punch Sutcliffe in the face, and that I froze it mid punch for extra dramatic effect. I call it the punch heard around the universe because it was extremely cathartic to watch, and also to don't you just wish that Georgiana did this to Lady Denham and Sanderson? I mean, yeah, this is kind of what we hope would happen to a rude character like Sutcliffe. Honestly, he's a really good example of what I frequently call Nigels. They're very racist, arrogant, and their perceived privilege to even ends up affecting the animal kingdom and that poor alien fish trapped under the ice in London as well. Of course, we can't discuss a period drama without some element of romance, right? So I'm going to break this little section up into two. We're going to talk about the doctors first and then the companions. Now, Thin Ice, because it's all about this class conflict and gender conflict and race conflict, and a lot of the friends of the Doctor in this episode are essentially little children. There's not much room for romance in all of Thin Ice. In addition, 12's romantic history is a little bit complicated because he's still technically married to River Song, although she's somewhere else in another universe at this point. We don't know what's happening. Doctor Who just kind of, their story kind of just goes back and forth a lot. And in this era, he hasn't seen her in a while. So, yeah, 12 is kind of off that table. And of course, there's the whole alien fish thing. The 13th Doctor knows from the very beginning that Lord Byron is not a great guy, but he's very heavy. He's very big on flirtation. And yes, he hits on her multiple times, although he has no idea that she may not be interested in men at all. That situation is also a bit complicated as well. But that's the great thing about Doctor Who is that each iteration of the Doctor comes with their own gender identity and also who they're attracted to. The 15th Doctor is the most lucky of the three because he clearly, from the beginning, sparks are flying between him and Rogue, and 15 is already very flirty in other episodes. And well, finally, Bridgerton's romantic drama just kind of gives him a chance to just kind of put himself out there the entire way. And it's, I'm not going to spoil too much, but it's definitely a much watch moment. Um, One thing to note is, although we haven't had as many directly inspired by Austen dramas mentioning themes of queerness, of Doctor Who's kind of gone there, especially modern Who, since its revival in 2005. Um, Basically, Russell T Davies, as I mentioned before, the showrunner for Rogue, is openly gay, and he's kind of used his episodes and the other screenwriters have followed in terms of presenting queerness in a positive way and kind of directly confronting bigotry in this regard. It's been a thing on Doctor Who for like a while now, and folks who kind of deny it are kind of fooling themselves. This is not just subtext; it's very, very obviously on screen what's supposed to be happening. Rogue also goes full tilt with possible romance period drama scenarios like fake engagements, fake dating, the the dance that's like filled with romantic tension and drama and all everything that will make multiple Lady Whistledown headlines. Bridgerton has not quite figured out how queerness works in their world, but Rogue is way more straightforward to the point. It just acts like it's just a thing and people just roll with it. I think that other period dramas should probably follow that as well in the future. The companions in these three episodes are probably not as lucky in love. And of course, the whole being chased by aliens thing definitely is hampers the situation. But there's also a little bit, but each companion's identity also kind of plays a role into how they're approaching romance to begin with. Um, we're going to start with the pictures of all these companions. We'll start from the top left. We have Bill. Bill is portrayed as openly gay in her earlier episodes, and of course, since there's a lot of children in Thin Ice, there's nothing happening there. And she actually, interestingly enough, the women she ends up speaking with in this episode are actually often children, so that's very interesting contrast between this and other episodes. If you want to see more of how Bill interacts with her identity in the past, a better episode for this would be later on in the season, The Eaters of Light, which is set in Roman Britain. Next on the top section, we have Ruby and Rogue. In this picture, she's actually looking at one of the other couples and kind of having a moment alone. Oh no, that's a definitely romance drama right there. It is interesting. Does allude to having at least one male ex. In fact, later on in this episode, she'll have a moment where she ends up getting a chance to give dating advice to a Regency woman named Emily, which is interesting because it's very modern influence. And the girl's like, "Oh my gosh, I've never heard of like feminism before." Ruby tells Emily to dump him because he's a jerk. Um, the picture at the top right is of Graham in Villa Diodati. Graham, at the beginning of his story, he lost his wife, Grace. Grace was also Ryan's grandmother, so that's how they're connected. Um, Ryan here in the bottom left, he's has shown occasional interest in ladies, but this whole house being weird and the aliens just kind of kill any vibes there as well. And then finally, also from Diodati, this is a picture of Yaz with one of the residents of the house. She ends up dishing out advice about unrequited feelings, and Yaz kind of reveals that she has her quote unquote special person is probably very clearly the doctor, but there are some feelings that haven't been resolved. So the takeaway of this episode of these three episodes is that you see modern queer people engage with Regency in a way that you don't see in other period dramas and Austen films. At the same time, though, not every Doctor Who episode is going to result in some kind of romance because the aliens get in the way. I've mentioned a lot about aliens, but haven't really talked about them because I don't want to. The alien plot is often like the big plot twist in these three episodes. That's actually one other commonality. But I'm going to show you briefly what they look like. First up on the top left, we have the Childer from Rogue and their scary Birdman drip. You can see the Childer, of course, are also wearing wearing your standard Regency bodices there. On the top right, we have the villain from Villa Diodati. They are a Cyberman. Doctor Who fans will recognize them as one of the Doctor's oldest enemies. This version of Cyberman looks like they didn't completely finish the Cyberman transition. You can still see parts of their face. For people who don't know, the Cybermen are basically space fascists. They start as humans and they undergo a procedure that turns their entire body into metal and their giant and their robotics inside there. And the key part of Cybermen is that there's no emotion; they feel nothing, and they only have the instinct to kill. And they're one of the most dangerous enemies that the Doctor keeps constantly having to fight. Um, on the bottom, we have the smaller version of the fish trapped in the ice. At Thin Ice, there is also a giant whale mammoth kind of like massive manatee hybrid. That's the bigger version of this fish. And you can see the little green light that emits underneath the ice as well. They end up kind of, you know, unfortunately, the people who fall on you guys, they kind of eat them. Sorry, it's kind of frightening, but yeah. I won't reveal any more about that plot or the rest of the alien plots. You're just gonna have to find out. In conclusion, Rogue, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, and Thin Ice are three very fun Regency period drama episodes, although they have huge bits of alternate history and science fiction and a little bit of romance mixed in there too. Well, at least in Rogue, not so much in the other two. Um, these are, even though all three episodes do not have as much of Austen in there compared to other um, elements in Regency, I think they're still really, really fun episodes for Austen fans to watch. I hope you all try them out or rewatch them with this video of mine after this. I love this. I would love to discuss more, but I didn't want to spoil all three plot lines. So I hope you come back and tell me what you thought about the episodes. In conclusion, let me give you some advice from the three doctors featured here. Travel hopefully, run fast and be kind, and don't forget to learn the language of rope. Now, since I've told you to watch these three episodes, where do you do so? Thin Ice and The Haunting of Villa Diodati and everything else between 2005 and the end of Jodie Whittaker's era is a bit more complicated in terms of streaming. The UK, you guys have it easy. It's all on BBC iPlayer. For the US, for now, as of July 2024, it is on Max, HBO Max, as we used to call it. Internationally, you have to check streaming listings because they have moved around a couple times. Rogue is a little easier. In the UK, it's on BBC iPlayer, and for everybody else, it's on Disney Plus. Very simple. Disney Plus only has the rights to the Ncuti Gatwa and future Doctor episodes. They do not have the rights to earlier ones, so that's what makes things a little bit harder. If you're looking for Classic Who, that's also a kind of search if you're outside of the US and UK. The UK probably has these things on iPlayer still. I mean, when I say these things, Classic Who. Americans, you should find Classic Who on BritBox. These are my photo credits so I don't get sued. First of all, I want to thank BBC Media Center, Kiss Them Goodbye, TARDIS Wiki, Wikimedia Commons, and Disney Plus. Tell me your thoughts on these three episodes after you watch them. Feel free to leave comments on the vid after you watch or rewatch. My email address is info@amanda-raeprescott.com. My website is amanda-raeprescott.com. I am Amanda R. Prescott on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram. On Blue Sky, I'm Amanda-Rae Prescott. Thank you all for watching, and thanks to my fellow Virtual Gen Con 2024 presenters and volunteers for allowing me to have this time with you all to speak about Doctor Who and Regency. Don't forget to check out my fellow presenters in the hashtag that is linked there in the video info. Thank you so much.